Hi everybody, and welcome to this unit on stems. In propagation and plant production work, we work with stems a lot. Stems form the basis of several different techniques of vegetative propagation. And in plant production, knowing how to manipulate the stems, usually by pruning techniques, is necessary for the production of a high-quality plant with a healthy shoot system that has good architecture. So let's take a look at some of the main aspects of stems that are important in propagation. The above ground or aerial parts of a plant are referred to as the shoot system and include stems, the attached leaves, buds, flowers, and fruits. One of the functions of stems is to provide structural support for the leaves, buds, flowers, and fruits. Stems also provide physiological support by providing pathways for the upward movement in the xylem of water and dissolved minerals from the roots to the leaves, and for the movement in all directions in the phloem of photosynthates from the leaves to all other plant parts. Some plants have stems that are modified for the storage of water and carbohydrates, like these daffodil bulbs in the photo. Other types of modified stem include rhizomes, corms, and tubers, and they'll be discussed in a later module on propagation from specialized storage organs. Let's take a look now at some of the external stem structures that are important in propagation. In the picture on the right, you can see part of a stem from an apple tree. This section of stem has several nodes, which are the points of attachment for leaves. The section of stem between each node is called the internode, and the length of the internode varies between species. It can be quite long, sometimes up to 30 centimeters or a foot in some climbing plants, or it can be extremely short, perhaps barely a couple of millimeters. At each node, in the angle formed by the stem and the leaf, there's an axillary bud, and this may be vegetative or reproductive. Vegetative axillary buds develop to form another stem with leaves, while a reproductive axillary bud develops to form a stem with flowers. Axillary buds can vary in shape and size depending on the species, but on most shrubs and trees they can be seen fairly easily. When we're selecting stems to use as stem cuttings, it's really important to use stems with healthy axillary buds that don't look dried up or as if they've been chewed by insects. We want these axillary buds to be healthy and to develop into lateral stems on our new plants. In this slide, you can see photos of 3 different plants illustrating how the length of the internode can differ. The stem on the left is from a lemon bottlebrush, Melaleuca citrinus, and the internodes here are around an inch long. You can clearly see the axillary buds in the angle of the petiole and the stem, and stems like this are very easy to work with. The photo in the middle is the succulent purple bush aeonium, whose leaves are spirally arranged in a really dense terminal rosette. The internodes here are barely a millimeter long, and we can only see them if we start to separate the leaves. The plant on the right is the South African herbaceous perennial Pelargonium pseudoides, which also has very short internodes. One of the skills we need as propagators is knowing how to prepare stem cuttings from plants with differently sized internodes, and you'll have plenty of opportunity to practice this in some of the labs. At the tip of a stem, you'll find a bud called the apical or terminal bud, and this confers apical dominance on a stem. Apical dominance is the phenomenon where a main shoot dominates and inhibits the outgrowth, the lateral growth of side shoots on a stem. Basically, the presence of that terminal bud reduces branching. Here's a very brief explanation of how the terminal bud inhibits branching. The terminal bud produces plant hormones called auxins, which move downwards in the stem. This downward movement of the auxins regulates the upward movement of another group of plant hormones called cytokinins, which help promote the sprouting of axillary buds. By blocking the upward movement of the cytokinins, the auxins effectively prevent the cytokinins from acting on the axillary buds, and the result is a stem which just grows upwards with no side shoots. Removal of the terminal bud, either deliberately by pruning or in the wild by grazing animals, removes the hormone signaling from the auxins that were produced in the terminal bud. As a result, cytokinins are then able to move upwards and act on the axillary buds, which then start to develop lateral growth. The result is a much bushier plant with more lateral branching and a fuller form. And for most plants, except trees, this is the desired shape. Many indoor and outdoor ornamental crops are tip pruned to produce a compact, bushy plant. Poinsettias are given what's called a soft pinch to encourage a bushy plant. If they weren't pinched, the resulting plant would just have a tall single stem, which isn't what the consumer wants. A soft pinch involves just removing the topmost node, and this has little to no effect on the length of time it takes to produce the crop. A hard pinch involves removing more than one node from the top, and usually sets back the production time because you're taking out several days or even several weeks of growth depending on the species. So it's really important that you factor this in the production schedule for your crops. In small nurseries, tip pruning is done manually, but this is labor intensive and therefore adds to the cost of production. It can also be challenging to prune a crop uniformly unless you have workers who are really well trained. Large nurseries usually have machines that do the pruning, and these vary in size from ones that can do just one plug tray at a time to ones like this machine in the photo, which can do hundreds of trays in just a few minutes. This photo was taken at the Alkemade nursery in the Netherlands, where they specialize in the production of young plant material for sale to wholesale nurseries across Europe. They produce around 18 million cuttings a year. In the photo, the machine's tip pruning a crop of lavender. By the time these plug trays are ready to go out to their customers, the young lavender liners will have started to branch out, and all the customer will then have to do is pot them up into a larger container. Some nurseries will collect the prunings and then stick them as another crop of cuttings. That's the end of this very short unit on stems. Head back to Canvas now for the next unit, or go take a break.